Welcome to the Model 3 LFP, a very desirable car in the EV market right now. These things starting at $42,000 plus a tax credit are a very economical decision. So today we're going to be running through a full build quality analysis on this particular car, comparing it to something like my dad's Tesla Model 3 Performance he just took delivery of a couple months ago. Welcome back to another out of spec detailing video. Let's get into it. This is the Model 3 LFP, the rear wheel drive one. These things start at $42,000. This particular car has one option, that is the blue paint, bringing this to a grand total of $43,000. Even at that price point, it is insane how much car you're actually getting. If you do qualify for the federal tax credit, this car is still currently qualifying for that at $7,500. There's also state incentives to take into consideration, bringing this thing in the $30,000 range. Pretty crazy. So what we're gonna do today is do a build quality analysis. Like I said before, we've had Teslas on here. We've seen good and bad things going on. I wanna focus on exterior fit and finish, jump inside, see how everything's feeling. And lastly, because I haven't had a blue Model 3 or Y here on the detailing channel, is look at the paint. Is it pretty thick? Is it inconsistent? How's this thing actually looking? So let's start here on the outside of the vehicle. Looking here at panel gaps on the hood, this is all looking really good. Something I am seeing on this particular car is if you see all this white marks in here, we've got some compound going on here. So I've already looked over this paint and a little bit of polishing. I'm gonna have Ryan bring the camera in here on this headlight. Look at all of that white compound in there. So that's a little concerning and honestly a little out of the ordinary from what I've seen with Tesla. Typically these cars come in relatively untouched. You'll see a few dust nibs here or there, definitely a few on this one that I'll show you. They come in there, quickly sand it, polish it out, typically at the factory, ship them out, and they really don't get a lot done. But this car has a ton of spots. We'll probably go through that later. Now, as far as fit and finish here, I'm definitely seeing that this headlight is almost sticking up out of here and not very typical what I see. Now moving down here as we go down, this actually looks pretty good down here, but definitely that whole headlight lens is sticking up. Panel gaps here look really good. I'm actually impressed with the hood on this particular LFP Model 3. My dad's Model 3 Performance had a lot of misalignment here, especially on this leading edge where the hood was kind of sticking down a little bit more in certain areas. So I'm really happy to see that here. Now moving along to the other side, man, this all looks really tight on here. Great panel gap, very consistent around here. And we are having a little bit of the same issue here on this headlight as well, where it's sitting up a little bit more than the paint. Moving all down here, gets a little tight down in this area compared to the other side. You can actually see the bumper sitting a little bit lower than the headlight where it's actually sticking up. So far, I would say this is looking decent as far as panel alignment. We're gonna dive deeper into all of this, but moving here to this front quarter panel and this A-pillar that runs off, this panel is definitely sticking in quite a bit. I'm noticing that this A-pillar is really kind of sticking out here. It definitely should be flush. This is aligned really nice. This panel gap looks okay, a little bit bigger here, and then definitely gets a heck of a lot tighter. Moving down the door, I would definitely say this panel gap is a little bit bigger than I normally see here. Moving along down here, this actually looks pretty consistent, which I'm glad to see, but it definitely does kind of taper, if you will, down here. Now this rocker panel, this is all fitting really nice. The quarter panel to door alignment here is very flush. Apologize for the water dripping out of the car. We actually just rinsed this off because it was quite dirty already. Moving along here, window trim. This is fitting really nice. A lot of the times on honestly all manufacturers, I see this be a serious area that they struggle with getting these aligned properly. This looks really good. And honestly, a lot of Teslas, this has been one of my biggest complaints where the back one's sticking up. This looks pretty good. It's not exactly flush, but really looks good. This panel alignment here is great. Here at this kind of sharp edge on the door looks really good. My personal Tesla Model 3 actually doesn't fit that great right there. The front door sticks out a little bit more, so I'm glad to see that. Trim back here, this looks really good also. Really like how this is fitting. nice rubber seal around here. I've seen them struggle with this rubber seal in the past. To me, this one is looking really good, really tight and precise gapping all the way around. Now back here, this has been an area that Tesla has really struggled with in the past. I see cars come in all the time where they're almost touching in these areas. This gap looks really good here and very flush, which I'm glad to see. I'm gonna bring Ryan over here on the other side though, because this side is not sitting so flush. You can definitely see, hopefully we can get this on camera, that the actual deck lid is sitting lower and this is sticking up quite a bit more. Panel gapping here, rather tight in this area, I would say, especially compared to the other side. Moving down here, you can see that this line tapers all the way down. This fits reasonably good. There is definitely some paint stuff going on here. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Moving back around here, this taillight, similar to my car, not looking perfect to say the least. You can notice this gap, how it gets extremely tight here and then really tapers out. And once you move to this one, you've got a reasonable gap going on here. So not perfectly aligned. I would like to see that tail light pushed in a little bit more. This gapping looks really good and very consistent with the actual deck lid there. So I'm really glad to see that. And then moving along into this area on the side tail light. This definitely looks a little off to me. I typically see these. I work on a lot of Teslas here, and this gap is very much, should be shrunk, I feel like. But it is reasonably consistent throughout here. I just think it needs to move a little bit. These are all separate pieces, so I think there's a little bit of movement that definitely could be going on there. One thing I'm seeing on the bumper to this rear panel here is this alignment here. You'll notice that the bumper is not fully on this area here, and what I think that's what is happening is it's actually pushing this bumper out because it's definitely sitting out a little bit. I think if this was pulled or pushed in a little bit more, it would tidy up this little gap here. Is that the end of the world? I don't know. I think it's just little adjustments here and there. From what I'm seeing so far, this car is, these Model 3s are really getting dialed in, which I'm glad to see. Believe me, I've had cars 10 times worse through here. The paint's a little goofy on this. Like I said, we're gonna keep going through there. But I really like what you're getting for a low $40,000 car, not including the tax credit. I think this thing is extremely competitive as far as build quality. Again, moving on here, this looks fantastic. I am so glad to see this. It blows my mind how many times manufacturers struggle with alignment on this. Model Ys have been notorious for having these panels misaligned, like I said before, but really, really looking good. Door handles in here, these all look as they should. Except for this one, I was just actually noticing, it looks like it's sticking out at the back here, whereas the front's sticking in just a little bit. Being super nitpicky, but definitely looks a little bit different as I'm looking at it now. One thing about these door handles, very similar to my dad's Model 3 Performance, it almost pops the door out quicker, so that's something they've changed as far as the actual door handles. My car is really like you have to pop it and really pull it, where this just bam, pops it out. Vastly prefer how these work, how they feel. They feel very premium in my opinion. Once you get used to these door handles, they are just actually one of my favorites. They're very simple to use, very easy. See how it pops it out nice there? Really nice door close on this particular car. Again, panel alignment here. Look at how precise this is all the way down. Really, really liking to see that. The thing I am noticing, and I didn't touch on the other side, is this gapping here. So this door is really tight all the way down and very flush here to the rocker panel. When we come to the front door, and this was exactly the same, this rocker panel sticks out and the door sticks in a little bit. I really wish we could get that a little bit tighter because it definitely looks a little weird. It catches your eye, especially with this dark blue paint. You definitely see that gap there and it's like, whoa, that's a little weird. So a few things going on there. This side having the same issue. This A-pillar sticking out. This alignment is extremely good right here. It fits absolutely perfect. So I'm glad to see that. But as we move down here, definitely inset a little bit. You can see quite a big notch here. If you come over to the other side here, Ryan, you can see how that panel sits in, and this is actually poking out there. So I think that fender needs to come out a little bit, specifically in this area. Following this gap down, definitely tapers. I would say that the other side was definitely a little bit bigger. This gets really pretty tight down here, but it is nice and flush. So that's really, really good to see. Also, sorry to keep going up and down here, Ryan, but this rocker panel is sticking out ever so slightly compared to here. I think that's being super, super nitpicky, but overall pretty good. My general impressions from the exterior of the vehicle, actually quite surprised. Few alignment things. I think Ryan could actually go into Tesla and get some of these things fixed if they really bugged him. I honestly think most of this stuff that I point out to people, they're just like, I honestly don't care, and that's totally fine. If you're OCD like me and a detailer, this kind of stuff, just like every time I walk up to the car, I'm like, oh, that's so misaligned, this and that. So I'm just trying to show you guys how these cars come in. My impression with Model 3 so far, these cars are getting so much better, especially at the price point. This thing at $42,000, $43,000. Wow, what a value of a car you're getting. Now this car is made in Fremont here. I'm not gonna show Ryan's full VIN here, but it does have the F in it, indicating that it is a Fremont built car. And I do wanna quickly touch on the glass on this car. This thing is very precise, and this is what I like to see and how all these cars should be looking. Great gapping all the way through. Fits extremely flush as we go here, as well as back here. Definitely not something I've seen on all cars, that being super consistent. I've seen those things all over the place, so really, really good to see that there. Other things that I'm noticing here, gapping all looks good here on the bumper as we move around. I mean, yeah, I think this thing for 43 grand is just a steal. So let me talk quickly about this trunk lid. This is something on my dad's car that is a little weird. And I asked Ryan when he picked his car up, how is your trunk lid feeling? And he's like, I mean, it operates as normal. What I saw on my dad's car, I'll leave a link in the description below to his 3 Performance. This trunk lid, when it comes up, was pulsing. So it would kind of come up, slow down, come up, slow down. And then it would finally go all the way up. This one operates as it should, except for right there. You notice it goes quickly and then kind of stops and then keeps going, but it seems a heck of a lot smoother. I know these have been a serious issue for Tesla in the past, getting these things dialed in. They definitely move over time. So if alignment's off now, it's definitely gonna move and settle. My particular car was almost perfect when I first got it as far as alignment here, because I've always heard about that on Model 3, so I was really conscious of that. My car has definitely settled, so I think it needs some adjustment. My car's a lease, so honestly, I'm kind of at the point where I'm like ready to get out of that car and get myself a Performance. But overall, exterior fit and finish, I'm very impressed with it. We're gonna jump inside now, and then we'll come back outside for the detailing nerds, get into the paint stuff, because I think a lot of people honestly don't really care about paint, but if you're on a detailing channel, you probably do. Let's jump inside now, and before we do, I want to show you guys something, and this is something I've seen with Tesla quite a bit. So I'm going to have Ryan come over here, and I've noticed this a bit, and honestly on these darker cars it kind of drives me nuts. So you open the door and you'll notice you can see almost a white tan color in here, a little bit of blue, and then the blue paint is not fully covering it. Now, I posted this on Twitter a while ago and got some comments back of like, I was curious to see, because it was on a blue Model Y actually, what people thought. Is that annoying? Is it okay? My personal opinion, that should all be painted blue. When you open that door jamb, you should not see any white or different colors in there. Now, as far as longevity of this, it still has a protection over the metal, so not worried about corrosion and stuff in there. I do wish though it had paint on there. That's being a little nitpicky, but to me, every time I open the door, I look right in that gap and I just see that and I go, ah, Tesla, you know, that's one of those things. But anyways, on the inside of this car, Ryan and I just looked around this thing, and I gotta say, to be honest, I can't find hardly anything. There's one little stitching kind of issue where it's a little bit wavy, if I'm being perfectly honest, here on the armrest. If you notice there on the leading edge of that armrest, it definitely gets a little wavy, especially with that piping there. Hopefully we can get the camera to focus. There we go. See, it's a little bit off. Honestly, that's my biggest gripe with the interior of the car. Other than when you buy a rear wheel drive Model 3, you don't get floor mats. So, a couple things on that though. This is how the car comes, basic carpets, you don't get a floor mat in it. My personal opinion, Tesla probably makes the crappiest carpet floor mat ever. My car, I literally took them out immediately and I've never used them. So I put in all weather mats in there. So my opinion is none of these cars should come with that. Put the all weather mats in there or something else, or have the option to tick the box for it. I don't know, that's just my personal opinion. Is it the end of the world? No, but if you're coming from another car, it's kind of weird to not have floor mats, especially in like a $40,000 car. I don't know, I just think it's a little cheap. What's interesting with this car, Model 3s always had the hardware for rear heated seats, and the Standard Range Plus typically didn't have those. You could unlock it in the app. I think it was like a $300 option. This actually has it already enabled. So we're making steps. I do think they could put floor mats in there, but again, it's like, I don't know, you don't really need the floor mats. I personally hate them. They just crinkle up. The material sucks. They're not great. So overall though, Model 3 interior, this thing looks perfect. So Ryan got the black interior obviously here with the wood on it. I actually think the wood looks kind of nice. My personal opinion, Ryan and I were talking off camera, said, so what do you've lived with this car for a few days. What do you think of the materials and stuff? And he goes, honestly, I prefer real leather. My personal opinion, I prefer these because they clean up easier. They wear a heck of a lot better. And in my opinion, they're a lot better for the environment to have this synthetic material. Now this whole vegan leather stuff, I really don't like the naming etiquette of that, but I do like this material. I really don't think leather has a good place in cars anymore when you have as good as materials like this. I'm telling you guys, this stuff wears incredibly. Same with something like Rivian's. Kyle on Out of Spec Reviews, of course, has his Rivian R1T. He beats his cars up more than anybody I know. His Rivian has like 30,000 miles on it now. Same material-ish, not exactly the Tesla material. The seats look brand new after you clean them up. It's literally incredible. Now, my personal opinion, the white seats actually clean a little bit easier. The reason I say that is the black seats in the Model 3s, Model Ys typically show some staining a little bit different, but you do deal with some gene transfer. We've talked a little bit on this channel about how to kind of omit that a bit and fix that, but I personally prefer the white. If you like black seats, go for the black seats. The only other gripe I have with Model 3, as I've lived with mine for now 18,000 miles, is this piece on the side of the seat. I think this material down here looks not only terrible, it feels pretty terrible. It's very cheap feeling. I think they could make that a little bit nicer. And in all honesty, that's my only real gripe as far as material choices in this particular variant of the car. If I had to be really particular, this material down here I think could be a little bit nicer, maybe a soft touch material. But again, we're talking about a low $40,000 car in this particular Model 3. I'm gonna jump over here on the other side here, Ryan. You stay over here. What I am very, very, very glad to see in this particular car, headliner is put in so precisely. All of these panels up here, especially on the glass, look at how these all fit so nice. This is not to be said for all cars. My Model 3 has an issue here on this side that it actually pulls out a little bit and it's not millimeter perfect. I've always tried to fix it, never had a good fix for it. This thing looks absolutely perfect, especially with headliner. And I know that's been a serious, serious issue Tesla has had. I've seen these panels pop out all the time. This one has a little give here. Mine, every time you do a hard left-hand turn, the passenger's shoulder goes into this area and it kind of clicks and pops and you're like, what the heck was that? It's like, it sounds like a tire or something. It's actually this piece not fully put in on my car, but honestly, this car looks every bit, if not more, of $43,000 that it is. Ryan and I were talking a little bit earlier how interesting it is what Tesla does with their interiors, that this interior, if you're getting in it compared to a 3 Performance, which is $10,000 more, they're identical. You don't notice anything other than floor mats, but you're gonna buy floor mats anyway, so not a big deal. So on the flip side, it's like, you know, if you're buying the cheaper car, you're like, okay, I get the same interior as a more expensive car, that's awesome. If you have the more expensive car and there's, you know, rear wheel drive Model 3s run around, they have identical interiors. So kind of interesting, but I think they've really dialed this interior in. I personally love having just the center stack screen in this. And yeah, this car is really, really, really impressive as far as fit and finish on the inside especially. So Now for you detailing nerds, let's jump outside and get into the paint. All right, detailing nerds, let's jump into it. There's some interesting stuff going on with this particular paint. Something that I've already noticed, the front bumper and up here, the paint matches absolutely perfectly, which is very similar to my car actually. And I've always made a comment about this as, you know, bumpers are typically different color from metal. They're primed different, they're painted different, painted on a separate line and then put back on the cars. The front bumper on this car, just like my car, is very, very good as far as color. Look at the difference there. No difference whatsoever. Now, let me pop back here and I'm gonna show you what I typically see. And this is same with my car. So up here, we have our normal paint color, a nice deep blue. Actually looks very different on camera than it does in person. This is really more of a navy. But as I come down here, look how much bluer this is. Like it's just a lot brighter blue, if you will. Definitely some scratches going on here. You can see in the scan grip light, but the bumper really doesn't match on the rear end. This is same as my dad's Model 3 Performance, and on my car, our bumpers are all different only on the rear. Really weird why that happens, but front bumper definitely looks good. Now, as I talked about before, we've got a lot more polishing stuff than I normally see on Teslas. Is that a little concerning? Absolutely. Now, my thought is this could be down to the actual service center. Ryan, where did you pick this car up at?
Littleton.
So Ryan picked it up at Littleton Tesla Service Center. Both my car and my dad's car were picked up at Tesla in Loveland, and the paint looked pretty amazing. This one, not so much. Lots of scratches on here, lots of haze and compound. So again, bringing you in here, all of this white marks in here, that is all compounding. And you can definitely see it as it pulls all the way down in here, this line here as well. Just tons of compounding marks. This is not gonna come through that great in camera, but as a detailer, I come in here with my scan grip light and it's definitely a little hazy, especially up here in these areas. I really wish they wouldn't be polishing on these things because every time you touch a car with a buffer, it is taking paint off. So we'll get into paint readings a little bit later. I am seeing a little bit of residue down here, definitely around the door handle here where they are polishing it. Let me see if I can get a good video here. So what I want you guys to look at is that light right around there. You see this micro marring around the actual light source. You can really see it there. It's tiny, tiny little scratches. So that means that area has been compound or improperly polished. So definitely seeing that throughout the car. Now, another thing that's strange, same on my dad's Model 3 Performance here, is the deck lid texture compared to this rear panel. And this one, honestly, is quite bad. So Tesla's not known for having great orange peel. My personal opinion, all cars have orange peel. I personally don't really care because these paints are so thin. I am not going in wet sanding, knocking out all the mountain tops, bringing them down to the valleys for perfectly smooth paint. These cars just don't have enough. But what I want you to notice, look at the texturing here, very normal. As I get over here, holy orange peel. Like this is really, really, really not good. Very thick looking, like it's just super, super textured. Now, as I pop over here, I'm gonna try and get this on camera here for you guys. It's always a little tricky to do so. I want you to follow these lights here, and you'll notice in this spot right here, it gets very smooth. So this was a denibbing mark right in that area where Tesla went in, quickly hit that because there was a speck in the paint and then polished it out. The unfortunate thing with that is now you can see it. So moving over here, texture, perfectly smooth. And you can actually see the denibbing mark in that left light there. So this was very similar to my dad's car. The texturing in this particular area was quite terrible. We'll get into paint readings because this is a little too low. Now moving over here, let's check this side and see how it looks. This side is definitely better, a little bit more consistent. I'm seeing another paint nib here, right in that area, and one of the worst ones on the car down here. So they've done the same thing. Look at the texturing up there, and then it gets super smooth in the middle. And honestly, they didn't even get the whole denibbing mark out. So really unfortunate to see there. And they've actually taken all the peaks and valleys out of this, perfectly smooth, and the paint is really thin in that area. and there's still the mark there. So really kind of frustrating to see that, especially on a brand new vehicle. Moving around the rest of the car, not seeing a whole lot of paint issues other than on the rear deck lid. I am seeing a small little dust nib right there, as well as right here. You can kind of see it there and here. So a couple around the car. This Model Y actually that I have over here has a tremendous amount of them. Not something I like to see. But overall paint quality so far, not the greatest, to be honest. Looks a little weird, but we're gonna see a lot more of that. Let's get the scan grips or the actual paint meter out. Awesome, so now we've looked around the paint a little bit. Again, some delivery scratches here and there. Texturing's a little weird. What I'm really curious to do is check this thing out with a paint meter. For those of you guys who don't know, I measure this in mils. That's not millimeters, it's mils. Totally different reading on here. What I want to see and what I typically see between cars is I want to see consistent paint. I don't want to be jumping from like 4 mils up to 8 mils back to 3 mils all over the place. I want to see it very consistent, and you're going to see some interesting stuff on this particular car. What a typical car should have between 4 to 6 mils. If you get into Porsches, Lamborghinis, that type of stuff, they have a lot more paint on them. Actually, what's interesting with Tesla is my car and my dad's car, being the pearl white variants of the Model 3, have a lot more paint. So they have a lot more pearlescent effect that they do, more multiple layers to get that paint thicker. Now that doesn't mean you have thicker clear coat, your just overall paint is thicker. So take that into consideration. Let's jump in here and see how this blue is looking. 417, that's a great start. 531, so huge difference just there and there, almost a mil difference. 462, so almost like a kind of high spot in the middle, if you will. Moving here, 381, so a little low. So we've got 2 mils difference between here and the center of the hood. That's really not great, to be honest. Definitely would like to see that dialed in a little bit more. 491 down here, 459 there. Let me flip over to this side of the hood and see if this is consistently low compared to the other parts. So it is. Very interesting. So looks like Tesla needs to get that process a little dialed in here on this upper portion. So anything, guys, that I see to start getting in that 3 mil range, I get a little concerned. When I hit lower than 3.5, my head goes, okay, we're starting to get thin. For your knowledge, 4 mils is typically the thickness of a sheet of paper. So think about that. You're going metal. So this is measuring from this tip down to metal. You have your base coat, your clear coat, all of those little layers in there that stack up to be the thickness of a sheet of paper. So if areas get a little thin and you're having to polish them out, yeah, you can really start seeing how bad this is. So let's see this area that they've definitely polished on here. 525, okay, great. 55. Okay, so fender is looking a heck of a lot better, a lot more consistent as we move down here. Way better than the hood. Great, that fender looks fantastic. Hood, definitely all over the place. Let's look here on this A-pillar. 445, great. Okay, so a mil difference. Okay. So that panel is a little better, not as bad as the hood, but getting there. Now this panel is weird. It's not only thin, but we've got areas in here that kind of freak me out. So let's measure here where a lot of texture is. 341, like I said before, anything below 3.5, my red flags go up. Let's go here right where they sanded, 357 and 384. So they actually didn't take a ton of paint off there, but you're seeing in this 3 range, really, really low. Let's go here in the center of the hood, 5 mils there, so huge difference. 4 mils, okay, not terrible, but getting lower, 336. Okay, so this is completely all over the place, to be honest. Going from 5.3 all the way down to 3.3. I would like to see that way more dialed in. I don't know if that's a thing with the blue cars. Like I said, I've had 2 of these cars in here. I don't remember the other one being that inconsistent. What I've been seeing from Tesla recently, especially with the white paints, A lot of the red paints seem to be a little bit more consistent. That's a little concerning, to be perfectly honest with you guys. But let's keep moving on here. 338, that's pretty low for this panel here. And 543. Okay. Let's go here a little bit lower. 488, and let's start getting into the doors. 479, 418. Okay, so doors are looking really good actually. That's about what I like to see. A little low here. So this is an area too down here that's gonna pick up a lot of rocks. Definitely would like to see that area be thicker than the area up here. So wow, I'm actually very surprised. This is not what I've been seeing recently with Tesla. So maybe they're still getting their paint booth dialed in. I can't believe that after this many years. I think a part of that may be they're trying to crank these cars out. They may be painting them slightly differently. Again, some weird orange peel stuff going on here. The bumper colors are pretty much the same. But yeah, some really weird things going on with this particular car. As a detailer, that makes me a little bit concerned, to be honest, especially the deck lid and the hood, how inconsistent those are. We still have room to polish the paint, so if Ryan would maintain this perfectly, he's not gonna run into a ton of issues, but if you consistently scratch this car up, go to polish it again, scratch it up, polish it again, you're definitely gonna start running out of paint, so keep that in mind. Now, let's talk final thoughts on this particular car. Paint, little concerned, like I said before. As far as exterior fit and finish, reasonably surprised. I mean, a lot of things look really, really good. I actually think this car may be slightly better as far as exterior fit and finish than my dad's. A few little things here and there, not horrible. Interior, perfect. It looks like, again, a couple tiny, tiny, tiny little things here, but I'm very impressed. This car at $43,000, what a freaking buy this car is. So if you're in the market for a low priced EV, one of the best softwares in the market, and I think reasonably improving build quality, especially compared to the competitors at this particular price point, get yourself a rear wheel drive Model 3. So thank you guys so much for joining us on another out of spec detailing video. We'll see you in the next one very, very soon. Bye-bye.